In the previous episodes, we removed some of the major components from the front end to prepare for tackling the rust in the front section. In today's episode, we will strip everything down, clean off all of the rust and protect the body. First, I started by removing the master cylinder vacuum line. Surprisingly, diesel cars use multi-layer shields, while petrol versions only get single layer ones. This is the latest upgrade, a human-powered engine. Of course, not everything went smoothly. Some nuts refused to move, so I had to use walking pliers to grip them tight and break them free. Then came the Textile sound insulation. To remove it, the brake lines had to be disconnected. They were badly in need of a refresh anyway. The lines were clipped into black plastic brackets, so I carefully unclipped and removed them. Extra care is needed, because most of these parts are in rough condition or simply NLA. And then the worst happened. The rust went deeper than I ever expected. In this spot, it ate straight through the steel. From that moment, there was no turning back. Everything had to come off. One by one, the coolant reservoir, the AC pipes, the brake lines, all the clips and brackets, the wiring, the auxiliary water pump and the remaining water hose, and finally the ABS module. Here I had to be as fast as possible. Brake fluid eats through the paint down to bare metal. That's why I carefully removed all the brake lines and rinsed everything with water. After that, I washed the entire engine bay with cleaning agents and finally vacuumed out the dirt. Only now could I truly see the real state of the front chassis, and it was tragic. Clearly, everything had to be stripped down to very last nut and bolt. I started with the remaining weather strips. then the wiper arms, lubricant didn't help much, but a wire did. With the arms gone, I removed the cover and the wiper motor. After about a week of fighting the rust with brushes and chemicals, I realized I couldn't reach my goals unless the front bumper came off too. The crash bars underneath were corroded as well. The bumper wasn't even mounted properly. The brackets were crushed. The right crash absorber was bent inward by almost 2 centimeters. That pushed the entire radiator assembly out of alignment. In short, the only way forward was to strip it too. I started the bumper removal from the right side. The bumper bracket put up a fight, but eventually it came out. Next was the fog light wiring. The cables were nearly rotted through. On the left side, the same story. Crumbling wires, bad connectors, and even the outside temperature sensor just hanging loose. The left bumper bolt came out easily, but the right one needs some persuasion before it gave away. Then the fender brackets near the headlights. And finally the bumper itself. Next came the right headlight and its connectors, then the left one. Luckily, no more trouble with seized bolts here. The hood release cables had to be disconnected too, but their sheets were crumbling apart. Then the horn wiring, and finally the right headlight. With the headlights out, I could finally remove the front panel. 2 bolts on the left, 2 on the right, and many more holding it to the frame. I undid all but 1 bolt per side, held the beam in place, and then removed the last ones. Next, the remaining cables and pipes in the way, the AC pressure sensor, the ground wire behind the left headlight, and several clips. Same process on the right side. Brake lines coming from the master cylinder, but before removing them I had to disconnect the AC lines first. A magnet came in handy here. The brake fluid level sensor wiring was in the way, more shielding had to come off, and finally managed to pull the lines free. Same story on the other side. What a huge mess I've gotten myself into. Since the subframe was heavily corroded, I decided the best option was sandblasting and powder coating, so I had to find a safe way to support the engine and pull the subframe out. With the engine hoist, I lifted it and unbolted the mounts, placed tools box under the oil pan and set it safely on pallets. This is what the engine bay looks like after about 2 weeks of scraping away rust. In this spot the sheet metal had completely rotten through. Luckily it wasn't structural, so no welding was needed. I decided to make it symmetrical so water could drain freely in case it getting inside. Once I realized the whole engine bay needs repainting, I started removing every little thing that could get in the way. Hoses, brackets, wires, you name it. What's this little lake here? Definitely needs fixing. Here is the famous dual valve. It controls the coolant flow to the heater core. All the hoses still need to be removed, followed by the valve itself. And the dual valve connector completely corroded. Once it was removed, everything had to be sealed tightly before moving on the next steps. Next up, the brake booster and master cylinder. Unfortunately, the brake booster is mounted from inside, by the driver's footwell, but since the lift blocks the door, access was nearly impossible. Still, I had to try. First, I removed 3 bolts and a plastic nut holding the trim panel. And then What the hell is this? Looks like an aftermarket audio system. Annoying, but it had to go. I disconnected the OBD plug, the central gateway, the driver footwell light, and the parking brake cable. With the footwell trim gone, I can now remove the brake pedal switch and its cover. Then comes the bolt linking the pedal to the master cylinder. Followed by the bolts holding the whole pedal assembly in place. To remove the brake booster assembly, I had to disconnect all the remaining brake lines and flush everything with water to protect the paint. Finally, the last obstacle was out of the way. But damn, in some spots the CM sealer had become so hard that it started chipping off along with the factory primer from the chassis. To fix this, I had to remove the front fenders. The repair would be much easier that way. And yes, once the fenders came off, there were new discoveries waiting underneath. These are the damages left behind by years of rusting, but soon they will be gone. The fenders turned out worse than I expected. The inner arches had peeled away almost completely, but once they were off the car, restoring them became much easier. The fender's inner arches, after a few hours of scraping with wire brushes, were finally clean. Here, the fenders and the chassis are prepared for primer, masked, cleaned with solvent. After a few long hours, the fenders and the chassis were finally sprayed with epoxy primer. The color is a sort of light gray. After the primer has semi-cured, it's time for a top coat of white acrylic paint, matching the factory color. Epoxy primer offers strong adhesion, but no UV protection. Without paint on top, it will degrade quickly. Here is the chassis and the fenders at near final stage. Beautiful, isn't it? After completing the body restoration of our diesel supercar, the next step will be to restore or upgrade all the small parts and pieces, followed by a full suspension overhaul, repairing or replacing every damaged and worn-out component, and bringing the car back to its former glory. We'll also add a few AMG upgrades here and there to sharpen the handling, along with some factory options that our car was missing. This is how rusty the brake pipes are. For a long time I wasn't sure how to deal with these steel lines. They're long, thin and nearly impossible to paint evenly. So here is what I came up with. Don't laugh, it actually worked. A layer of epoxy primer, followed by a dark green finish, matching the original color, just like it left the factory. I also restored the missing seam sealer, adding a bit extra in the weaker spots for strength. Then came the final layer, white paint, sealing everything in and giving it that fresh factory look. After a few days of drying, I applied wax protection. Okay, it's not perfect, but almost none of this will be ever visible. Only I'll know, and you. The ones who made it this far into the video. If you would like to support the channel, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps a lot. Thanks for watching and I wish you all the best.